How do you feel about the you're not the father jokey dramatization? How does that make you feel? Again,
You have to laugh at some of it. I mean,
The drama.
Some of the drama is really funny, and I get it's entertainment, but at the same time, a lot of people don't understand. There's a child that's not on the screen.
Hello everyone and welcome to On the Grid. My name is EJ and we have a fabulous show ahead of us. With me today is Brian Crocker from DNA Testing Solutions. Did I get that big name right?
You got it correct.
So I really love what you do. I think your work is this weird balance between business and science. And one of my first questions originally was, what is your background in science? How did you get here? But you say you actually have a business background. Tell me a little bit about that mixture of worlds and how we got to where you are now.
Well, it's a little bit of science. Well, I was working at it's now called Quest Diagnostics Laboratories, but at the time it was called SmithKline Beecham Laboratories. I was working there while going to college, and it was kind of interesting how it developed at that time. They were offering paternity testing, but back then it wasn't DNA. It was called HLA testing, which is blood serums and red cell antigens to determine the probability of paternity. Not extremely accurate whatsoever. DNA came about, and I would say around 92 or 93 when it really started to become popular. So it just kind of developed that when I was working there, a person I was working with started doing collections, blood collections for DNA, and a lot of my background was actually with computers. So I was kind of doing some of his database work and things, and then I ended up, he started a company. I went over and started working with him back in 1995. And then in 2001 is when I left there and started DNA Testing Solutions. So we're 20, I can't believe it's been that long. Oh my goodness,
I know,
it's so fast, the time just flies. You're like, that was 23 years ago?
I'm such a pop culture fan. Every time I realize 1999 is 25 years ago now, I'm like, okay. Yes. I love The Matrix. That's 25 years old now, things like that. So you're interesting with your history of this. You kind of seen DNA testing grow, as you've said, the not so accurate. I'm a true crime fan. So I love, hearing about 70s and 80s when we started using forensics more. And now you're saying in, 90s, it was still not as accurate. Can you talk to me about 1995, paternity testing, the DNA world, to where we are now? Different, not so different?
Huge difference. Back then, you had to do, there's two methodologies. There's PCR and STR testing. So back in the day, back then, STR was mostly used for, you have to draw blood. And by having to draw blood, it makes it more difficult. On the children, it's bad, having to do heel sticks. By the time 95, 96, and I'd say by 97, most all laboratories went over to cheek swabs, buccal swabs, getting the cheek cells. At that time, it wasn't just a cotton swab, it was more like a big toothbrush crushing in, and so it's still kind of difficult, but I would say by 98, 99, it was now down to just a couple, basically long Q-tips. And so as far as the collection part of it, that made it much different. And then the actual turnaround time. The turnaround time typically 7 to 10 business days. Even before then, it was 2 to 3 weeks for results. There's still some labs out there that still take that long. But with today, I mean, we went from a 5 to 7 business day turnaround time to, with us, we're 2 business days in lab. We can get results out in about 2 business days for your standard cheek swabs. If it's a non-standard sample like a toothbrush or fingernail clippings, lots of different non-standard type samples, blood spot cards for deceased samples, those can take an extra day or so. The biggest difference, I think, probably in the advancement, prenatal testing. We can now, you could do prenatal DNA paternity testing many years ago. However, it was from CVS fluid or an amniotic fluid from the mother. The problem with that, that's very invasive, and you're putting the child in danger. The doctor has to go in and basically puncture the amniotic sac to draw that fluid out, and then we have to culture it. We would have had to culture it, and then to be able to get the cells. Today, there's something called a non-invasive prenatal, where it's just a blood draw when the mother is after 7 weeks gestation. So by doing that blood draw, it's completely non-invasive, and except for the blood draw
Well, I
part,
was
but
like,
a little invasive.
little invasive,
And it's not very
yes.
fair because the alleged father, still is only a cheek swab. So like, but the mother has to get blood.
Oh,
but
man.
no chances of hurting the child at all. The free-floating fetal cells start running through the mother's blood at that time. So that's something that you can that we offer now. That's, I mean, it makes a huge difference, you know, to be able to the father to be there throughout the pregnancy with the mother, you know, and maybe they make some decisions on what, you know, on what they, if he's not the father, if someone else is, then they can make the decision before the child.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not the therapist here.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
do the science.
We say that, yes, and that's what we say. At that point, you know, we get a lot of questions like that too. Well, now I want to put something on the birth certificate. When I have these results, we're like,
that's an inside
we're the lab.
search.
Yeah. We're the lab.
But I also love that you seem passionate about that, though. You do seem that you do care. There's a couple things I want to note. First off, I can get my paternity test quicker than Amazon with you guys. That is great. Like, my packages don't even come in 2 days sometimes. Amazing. And two, I could hear you explain science. Where were you in high school for me when they're trying to explain cells? And I'm like, what?
I was probably in ISS, in school suspension. That's probably where I was at that time.
Well, you explained it so well, and it's just interesting. Like I said, I like that passion that you have for this. Was that something when you started DNA Testing Solutions? Did you have I don't want to say a heroic side to you, but you're like, I want to do something good. You know, this is a business. I think we all go into business to make money, but is there like an emotional attachment for you?
There is such a huge emotional attachment, especially when you talk to these folks on the phone. And you know, I always tell them, a lot of times, I can't tell them, I don't know what they're going through because I haven't been through it, but I know what you're going through and the end result of what kind of erasing any doubt. And I've had guys, I had a sport, because we've done famous sports people, obviously, everything's confidential. But I remember one gentleman received his results in person instead of, now today it's email.
Yeah.
Back then, we had to mail them the results. So it kind of took a little longer, or they had to come by the office, pick it up. But today they get it instant. But back then they'd come into the office. When he got the results, he was so happy. He ran out into the parking lot, yelling and screaming. We had people from other businesses come out, look what's going on. He'd run, and it was really funny. And then on the opposite of that, we had someone find out he's not the father, and I had to hold him up. I mean, it about brings me to tears and gives me goosebumps now, because this guy I felt so bad for him. He's raised this child. So yeah, it's emotional. I mean, I even gave him my cell number and said, you need someone to talk to, man. Yeah. I don't want you to go and do something drastic or something. I said, I'm not a therapist, but you need someone to talk to, I'll do it. So you get attached to some of these. I've had so many clients that call back. I knew I was old and doing it for a long time when we've had someone we did a paternity test on as a baby, and then they're back in as an adult testing to see if their child is their child. Okay. Their mother was there, the grandmother of the new child is there, and they come in and said, yeah, we were here back in 2002 or whatever. And I'm going, what? And later on I'll look it up. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was a baby, a toddler. Wow. Well, I'm like, now I'm old.
You're doing generations of paternity tests.
Yes, generations. It's funny.
So from gathering some of your information, what we've talked about, DNA Testing Solutions has worked in the world of entertainment, at least television. Can you explain a little bit of how that started, how you kind of fell into the Montel Williams lap, which is, I mean, amazing in its weirdness?
Well, it is kind of funny. The company I'd worked for back in '95, before I started DNA Testing Solutions, I was there when we first picked up the Montel Williams show with that company, and when I had left there, the show wanted to come with me. So I didn't take it; just they wanted to come over, and because we had myself and Vicky, who had worked for me at the time, and she's retired now. They knew us. We were the ones that set everything up and was always on the ball with it. And so they followed us over, which led to a couple other shows. We did Sally Jesse Raphael.
Miss those glasses.
Judge Joe Brown, I think we did a few. And believe it or not, I think we did one or two Jerry Springers, and we kind of bailed on that because we wanted to be more serious. And if anyone knows Montel Williams show, very serious, very calm, very none of the shenanigans, of fighting and nothing like that. It was a very serious show. That's what we want to be. That's what we want to represent. Because this is a serious thing, and this changes people's lives. I mean, even our tagline is "Erase all doubt," and that's one of the biggest things, by the way, about. Sometimes you'll have a father, I don't know if I really want to know. I'm like, well, if you're wondering and your child, if that child is yours, you could, without even knowing it, treat that child different because you're wondering. Best to knock it out if it is. Great. If it's not, if the child is not yours, doesn't mean you love them any less. Yeah. It means that you can continue. You can, you have that in the back of your head now, but at least you know. Yeah. And so, but anyway, as far as the media type things, it was crazy back in those days before he retired. They would air, and in between the segments, basically it was a bartering type thing because we would do the testing for him, and as for them to not really advertise, but they would put our name and phone number and website and everything in between the segments up there, and of course all over the country, go different time zones. So we'd get slammed, have 30, 40 calls in the queue, or and on those particular, we call them Montel days. Yeah. I'd have extra people come in to answer the phones, and all we could do, just couldn't answer their questions at the time. We'd get their name, phone number, email address, and sometimes at that time, some people didn't even have email. Talking about early 2000s, some people still didn't have email. So we would actually get their name, phone number, and address, and mail them information, have them call back, and things like that. So. And those days were crazy. And sometimes we wouldn't even know there would be a rerun. We'd be slammed. But yeah, so we kind of got it. That's how we got into that part of it before we started getting contracts for local Florida counties and the most of your foster parent type stuff that we do here. Children's Network. Here, it used to be called HKI. We do a lot. We do all of their DNA paternity testing, hair drug testing, things like that.
I want to touch on, before we kind of move away from the entertainment side, the other shows that exist that have paternity tests. You kind of touched on it. Don't take it as serious as something like Montel. How do you feel about the "you're not the father" jokey dramatization? How does that make you feel? Again, I see it. I'm like. There's that moment you go, haha, that person's running. Then you go, how do you feel?
I see it. You have to laugh at some of it. I mean,
the drama.
Some of the drama is really funny, and I get it's entertainment, but at the same time, a lot of people don't understand. There's a child that's not on the screen. That means there's a child there now that may not have that don't know who their father is, or what happens when they grow up and they get to see a rerun of their mom and possible dad, or maybe was or wasn't. And I don't know, that's what I think about. What about the child? I mean, sure, it's entertainment and things, but doesn't the child should kind of have a say-so too, as the parents go on one of the talk shows. But in the end, at least they do get a test done. Yeah. And it's some entertainment for sure.
It's a weird mix of worlds.
The one thing, though, I got to tell you on the media part is you said you were a CSI. Or One thing we always had to say was some things are not it's not real on there. When they pull up one hair and say, okay, we can get the DNA, you will pretty much almost never get DNA from one hair follicle on there like that. You need several, and if the hair fell out, the follicle's dead, so you can't get that. So, and then they'll show swabs going into a plastic bag. That is a no-no. Bacteria grows, it completely destroys the DNA.
So can you not watch any science show?
Not take it all serious.
Oh, good, yeah.
I can't. Yeah. I some of them, the true science ones, you see that it's true, it is real. But the CSI ones, and they're getting better now. Actually, they're not thinking that nobody understands about this. We can put anything we want out there. It's not true. So now they're starting to.
I know the doctor shows had to deal with that for years. So now they bring doctors on, and they're like, I'm not going to do that while I'm doing open heart surgery. I like that there is that realness that needs to be there.
Bringing it in.
It brings it in, because again, I love a camp. I love an over the top, and there's a time and place for it. But at the same time, you're like, I need some sense of reality and some sense to grab this in.
Right.
What I really like too is you talk about clients doing fraud, committing fraud through this. Tell me about that a little bit, because I wrote down fraud, question mark.
Right? Yes.
I have
Yes.
questions of how that even works.
Yes, and not just DNA testing, but hair follicle testing. They try to fraud. There's a couple things. One time we will receive, and we kind of keep some of these reports. We had someone send us a copy of a report that the mother gave them. I mean, there's misspellings all over it, didn't use the right verbiage, did everything, but they're trying to say that, yeah, you are the father. And so they're trying to fraud by giving a false report. That's one. But probably the biggest one that I remember this was in the late 90s, actually, in Lakeland, Florida. A mother, she apparently just did not want this guy to be the dad at all. She went as far as bringing in the neighbor's child.
Oh, okay.
And now, a good thing about doing a trio, when I say trio, father, mother, child, we're not testing to see if they're the mother. We usually eliminate the DNA that belongs to the mother from the child. What's left belongs to biological father. So it's a better test. Typically doesn't cost anymore, but it's a better test. Well, back then, we always were trying to do trio, and we still kind of do, but a good reason is for this reason alone. Came up that it was flagged the mother was not the mother of this child. And when looking into it further, she apparently had admitted that it was a neighbor's child, and she went as far as taking a syringe, now not with a needle on it, but a syringe, and took the mother of that child's saliva and squirted it on the inside of her cheeks before she went in, thinking that we were going to get saliva. And we're not looking for saliva, we're looking for cheek cells. So we didn't even get any of that DNA. We got her DNA, and it proved that she wasn't the mother. So
my girl drank spit for no reason.
Isn't it yuck, right?
Yeah, that is top 5 grossest things I've heard. Thank you so much, Brian. I want to end the show right now because I have a lot to think about. No, that's interesting. And again, I never thought about the frauding aspect, and I never thought anyone would want to maybe corrupt the system. That seems odd, but at the same time, there's
always somebody.
I've met my own friends who are like, I don't want that guy to be dad. I'm like, well, we made choices, didn't we? And so moving away from the paternity side, I know you do a little bit of the hair drug testing. Explain that to me. Not the science behind it, please. I don't think we have enough time. But explain that a little bit to me, and then I have a follow-up question a little bit on that as well.
Well, and even going into that, trying to fraud a hair drug test, is someone will be when it's ordered in court to have the test done. All of a sudden, they have hair, everything, but then they come to the office and they're shaved like this, except no body hair, nothing, shaved everywhere. Yeah. And I remember even being on a Zoom virtual as a witness, and it cracked me up, so I could never forget it. The judge says, "Why did you shave everywhere? What do you do for a living? You're obviously not a bodybuilder." Excuse me, that cracked me up, so I've never forgotten that. Hair drug testing, there's a lot of different panels that are being done, just like in urine, but the difference is you can go back in time. Kind of like a tree. With the rings of a tree, you go back in time as it grows. The further you go inside, you can see what minerals were, whether was there a drought, things like that. Well, with hair, it's more linear. It's from the root, we cut right at the scalp, going back into time, because as your hair grows, those metabolites get into the shaft of the hair. So throughout that time, for every half inch of head hair is an approximately 30 days worth of drug use. And we do it basically, you can ask for a 30-day, but it's basically sold into segments of 90-day increments. Yeah. So you can detect drugs back as much as you're willing to pay, to be honest with you. It could go way back. And it tests for your standard, your standard drugs. Well, one extra one they do is PCP.
Oh, yeah. Just the casual PCP.
Yeah. Angel dust, they called in the 70s. Yeah. I don't even know how many positives has even been in the last 10 years on.
Truly.
Not many.
Yeah. So. Well, that kind of ties into my next thing. We're in this era now where does this for jobs, do you do any of this for work, employment?
Pre-employment, some, yes. Okay. We do have some coming in for pre-employment.
Because now we're in this era where medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, has that shifted? That has what jobs are looking for? Because I have a friend who's on a medical marijuana card and who's always just like, if I apply for a job, how does this work? And I'm like, I think we're in a gray area. I don't know. And then I'm on your side of it. Has that changed as now that that's kind of opened up a bit?
It has changed it to where it's still federally illegal.
Absolutely,
okay?
yeah.
So by it being federally illegal, and we're throughout the United States, we have to report it positive or negative regardless.
Yeah.
Okay? And the thing about hair drug testing, though, is that it's more of a lifestyle check. It's not going to test that one or two time use throughout that time frame. Well, with a medical marijuana card, it is pretty constant, so it's going to pop up. And the only difference here, what we tell people, and they say, well, I want to show you my marijuana medical card, and we don't need to see it because it's irrelevant with us. We're going to show positive or negative. You need to show that to your employer, show that to the case manager with the county or whatever they're having it tested for. That's their decision. And there are some companies still, I believe, that you can't work there if you know, which, and that's in a matter of opinion on whether it's right or wrong. It's a complete opinion, but it still exists is the point.
Yeah, I like your breakdown of that, because it is something that it's interesting. We're in this weirder, as the paternity test has evolved, so is drug test, and so is the drug culture, and so is paternity culture as well. What is the biggest difference you've noticed with both of these industries from when you started, more culturally, more in the societal way? Is it more common, less common? More people talk about it. Do you find these kind of things?
Social media. Social media. I mean, think of this, 1995, 1990, in the 90s period, I mean, the biggest advertising thing was the Yellow Pages. I mean, the Yellow Pages, that was your big thing. How can we be ranked on the Yellow Pages? Bigger ad, more expensive ad, what do you do? Non-existent. Those are the things. So once social media come out and really, not just on an advertising side, but the whole concept of paternity, and it just put it out there that more people then started realizing things that were available and things that may help or hinder. I got to say, it's probably social media is the biggest difference when it comes to that. Nothing on the science side, just on the social side with people talking about it. And of course, you have your memes, Jerry. And,
yes.
You have all your memes and stuff on you are not the father,
Yes.
So, but back then you could say paternity testing, and honestly, what is that? Nobody knew what DNA paternity testing was. I mean, we were barely past OJ being chased in the Bronco in 1995. I mean, I think that was 91 or 92 or something. I don't remember the exact date. It was early 90s. So DNA still wasn't, people didn't know really what DNA was then. Today, everybody knows what DNA is. Everybody knows paternity. And so that's probably the biggest difference. Social media really brought it to the forefront, and OJ Simpson. So.
My DNA first shot was Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park.
Yes.
He was the one that he got me through that. So I want to speak about hesitation now. I want to speak about people who may be nervous for this, who may be not used to particularly, or maybe scared about doing a drug test or a paternity test. I'm terrified of doing DNA tests. I don't want to send my stuff off to various.com website for you to have my stuff. What's this hesitation? Do you see it? Do you understand it?
We see it a lot. We see it. First question we get many times for someone who may have concern about that is it's not going to be sold. It's not going to be on a database somewhere, right? We're not. Right? First thing with us, no, completely 100% confidential. Can't be used for anything but this test. We have to get permission from that person to reuse that sample if they're wanting to add another father or add another child to the case. They have up to 1 year to do that. That's the only thing it can be used for. So, there's these there's ancestry type testing and things like that out there that you have to sign. You have to put on there that because they have to have that for their database in order to try to find a possible cousin or something like that. So that's a big concern for people. And it's a concern which I get, but at the same time, every time we log onto our phone, dang well, they're getting every bit of information except your DNA. So at this point,
I'd much rather you have my spit at this point than my social.
Right, or even or the contacts where we're, I just happened to ask my wife about a changing the fence out. Next thing I know, I'm on Facebook and I got fence advertising.
Oh, I'm so.
Wait, I talked about it. How? What? So
I
I'm
know
more
my
worried about
phone.
that.
My phone's going to be throwing out paternity testing me all day. And I'm
All
like,
day.
I'm like, ooh, wrong person. We're good there. Oh, no, it's
Your
just-
wife sees it and says, "Oh, what is?"
Yeah, maybe not the wife. No, that's just interesting to hear that hesitation because, again, I have my own. And I just love that you are trying to make this less scary, especially for the men, especially for the women as well. This is a very male-focused conversation at times, but the women are a big 50% of this. So I love that you're trying to break down the fear of this and make it as simple as we can. That's why I'm really happy that you're here speaking with us,
I
because
appreciate
you broke this down in ways that I think hopefully people were like, I maybe should try this out.
Right.
Again, especially things like I never would have thought about DNA, like sicknesses. My stepbrother's in the hospital right now. I'm like, you don't really know much about your dad's DNA. What if high blood pressure? Things like that. We need to know this stuff.
Right, inheritable disease type testing. Yes.
So I'm just happy you have this opportunity. Anything else you want to share with us? I love your slogan for your website, but anything else you want to kind of give out to the universe before we wrap up today?
To me, I want to say, have no fear. Talk to us. Call us. We'll be there for you. You don't have to make a decision to have a test done, but we even have, if you have that doubt, mothers out there, if you have that doubt and you don't want the alleged father to know, bring a toothbrush. We can just, to ease your mind, ease their mind. It's easy it's so fast now, so easy to do. And believe me, Shayla in our office also, she's a big part of the business and and she is so knowledgeable as well. And we're very passionate at what we do, and we will talk to you as long as you need to. You're not just a number. Some big companies you call and you get a case number, you'll never get the same person or anything. With us, you can ask for any of us at any time. We will talk to you. So and being here in Tampa's our home.
Yeah,
Tampa.
You started this off by saying you're not a therapist. No. Boy, do you have that warm energy, though. Love to see it. I want to say thank you guys for joining me. And Brian, thank you so much for speaking with me today, diving into the best science class I've ever had. This has been great, educational, informative. Thank you guys so much for joining me. EJ for On the Grid, thank you guys for joining me. Make sure you guys tune in for another episode.
Hi, I'm Brian Crocker with DNA Testing Solutions, and you're watching Tampa Bay Community Network.